Have you ever noticed how the atmosphere of your entire house changes the moment the sun finally goes down? During the daylight hours, there's a natural rhythm of distraction that keeps you moving forward. There is work to be done, conversations to be had, responsibilities demanding your immediate attention, and a constant hum of background noise that keeps your deepest thoughts carefully suppressed. But then the evening arrives. The front door locks. The television turns off. The emails stop coming in. And suddenly, the silence in your room becomes almost deafening. You lie there in the quiet dark, staring up at the ceiling, and the moment your body stops moving, your mind begins to race at a terrifying speed. All the anxieties you successfully ignored during the day come rushing back to the surface. You start replaying past conversations, worrying about upcoming deadlines, calculating finances, and trying to figure out how you are going to survive the overwhelming challenges waiting for you tomorrow morning. If you are listening to this right now, I want you to take a slow, deep breath, because you did not stumble across this message by accident. There is a very specific divine reason you are hearing this exact voice at this exact moment in your life. You are exhausted. You are carrying a burden that has made genuine rest feel absolutely impossible. But before this night comes to an end, a profound spiritual shift is going to take place in your heart. You are not meant to carry this heavy weight into tomorrow. Your peace is coming. We often operate under a profound misunderstanding of what peace actually is. We have been conditioned by the world to believe that peace is simply the absence of problems. We think that if we can just earn enough money to clear our debts, or if we can just fix this one broken relationship, or if we can just get a clear medical report, then we will finally be able to exhale and rest. We treat peace like a destination on a map, a place we can only reach once the storm has entirely passed. But the peace that God offers operates in complete defiance of human logic. His peace does not wait for the storm to run out of rain. It walks directly out onto the crashing water, steps into the violent wind, and meets you right in the middle of your absolute chaos. Tonight is not just another passing evening on the calendar. It is an invitation to lay down the heavy armor you have been wearing to protect yourself. The message you are receiving today is not just a comforting psychological trick. It is a spiritual reality. The anxiety that has been whispering worst-case scenarios into your ear all day long is about to lose its power. The tension you are holding in your jaw and your shoulders is going to release. The creator of the universe is stepping into your personal space right now to offer you something that money cannot buy and human effort cannot manufacture. Let us be completely honest about what it feels like to be where you are right now. There is a unique, bone-deep exhaustion that comes from trying to hold your entire life together with your own fragile human strength. You wake up early every day. You try to be a strong foundation for your family. You try to perform with excellence at your job. You try to be a supportive friend. And you try so desperately hard to keep your faith from completely crumbling. On the outside, you might look like you have everything perfectly under control. You smile through normal daily conversations. You offer helpful advice to others. And you bravely nod along when people tell you that everything happens for a reason. But on the inside, you feel like a fragile piece of glass hovering right over a concrete floor. You are silently wondering how much more pressure you can take before you finally shatter. And when night falls, that brave public face finally drops. The darkness of the evening amplifies the fears you kept hidden so well during the light of day. You wonder if God has somehow forgotten your address. You wonder why this particular waiting season is lasting so agonizingly long. You look around at other people who seem to be receiving their answers, stepping easily into their breakthroughs and living exactly the life they prayed for. And you quietly ask, Lord, when is it going to be my turn? This kind of waiting is deeply, intensely painful. It can make you feel entirely isolated, even in a house full of people. But I want to assure you right now that your quiet, hidden tears have never once fallen on deaf ears. The frustration you are feeling is not a sign that your faith is broken. It is not a sign that you are a terrible Christian. It is simply a sign that you are human and that you are standing in the middle of a very real, very disorienting spiritual wilderness. When we open the pages of Scripture, we discover something absolutely beautiful and deeply comforting about how God works in these dark hours. We often rush past the painful midnight moments in the Bible so we can get to the morning miracles. But the night is exactly where the deepest faith is forged. Let me take you to a powerful moment in the book of Acts. The early church was facing severe persecution, and the Apostle Peter found himself in a terrifying situation. He had been arrested for his faith and placed in a cold, maximum security prison. King Herod had already executed James, another innocent apostle, and the king fully intended to bring Peter out to the angry crowd the very next morning to face the exact same brutal fate. Think about the heavy gravity of that situation for a moment. Peter was only hours away from what looked like the absolute, undeniable end of his life on earth. He was physically chained between two armed Roman guards. There were heavily armed sentries standing watch at the solid iron doors. Every single physical reality, every piece of logical evidence, said his situation was completely hopeless. If you or I were sitting in that damp, dark cell, what would we be doing? Most of us would be pacing the hard stone floor until our feet bled. We would be wide awake, trembling, crying out in sheer panic, begging heaven to immediately send a way out. We would be completely consumed by the terrifying reality of tomorrow morning. But what was Peter doing? The scripture tells us something astonishing. It says that an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in the prison cell, and a bright, blinding light shone in the darkness. But Peter didn't even notice at first. Why? Because Peter was fast asleep. He was sleeping so deeply that the angel literally had to strike Peter on the side just to wake him up. This is one of the most profound pictures of perfect peace in all of human history. Here is a man facing a literal public execution in a matter of hours, and he is resting so soundly that a glowing angel and a sudden explosion of light do not even break his slumber. How is that humanly possible? How does a person sleep on the eve of a disaster? It is possible because Peter had reached a place of complete, total surrender. He had handed the final outcome entirely over to God. Peter knew that pacing the cold floor would not change King Herod's cruel mind. He knew that worrying would not melt the iron chains holding his wrists together. He knew that his own human panic could not alter the plans of the Roman Empire. So instead of fighting a battle he could not win, he handed his dangerous tomorrow over to his Creator and decided to close his eyes. This brings us to a crucial, life-changing question for your own journey tonight. What are you chained to right now? What is the terrifying tomorrow that is threatening to steal your sleep and ruin your peace tonight? Maybe it is a medical report you are waiting for with a heavy, sinking heart. Maybe it is a severe financial deadline that is closing in on you faster than you can possibly manage. Maybe it is a broken family relationship, a prodigal child, or a marriage that seems completely impossible to ever repair. The chains look different for all of us, but the feeling of being trapped in a cold cell is exactly the same. You have been pacing the floor of your own mind for weeks. You have been trying to calculate a perfect way out. You have been analyzing every possible scenario, hoping your tired brain can somehow manufacture a sudden, miraculous solution. But just like Peter, your worry cannot melt the iron doors. Your anxiety cannot change the external circumstances. The only thing your mental pacing is doing is robbing you of the vital strength you desperately need for whatever tomorrow brings. That God is standing in your room tonight, just as the angel stood in Peter's cold cell. And he is offering you a profound, beautiful exchange. He is asking you to trade your anxious pacing for his perfect peace. He is asking you to stop trying to play the role of the author and to trust that he is already writing the next chapter of your story. True peace does not mean your problems instantly vanish into thin air. We must remember that Peter was still wearing physical chains when he fell asleep. The prison doors were still tightly locked and guarded. Peace simply means that you realize who holds the ultimate master key. Peace is the quiet, steady confidence that even if the worst-case scenario happens, God is still firmly seated on his throne, and he will not let you walk through the fire alone. You do not need to figure everything out before the clock strikes midnight. You just need to hand the heavy clipboard back to God. Let's pause for a moment and reflect deeply on what happens when we refuse to let go. Have you ever considered how much mental and emotional energy you spend trying to control things you were never meant to carry in the first place? We are so terrified of the unknown that we would rather hold onto a heavy, exhausting problem than hand it over to an invisible God. We think that our constant worry is somehow protecting us. We subconsciously believe that if we just stress about a situation enough, if we just lose enough sleep over it, we are being responsible. But worry is not responsibility. Worry is simply a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. It only exhausts you. Consider the natural world for a moment. Think about a massive, ancient oak tree during a severe winter storm. The wind is howling violently. The temperature has dropped well below freezing, and the branches are being violently shaken back and forth. Does the tree worry about the storm? Does it panic that spring might never come again? Does it stress about losing its leaves? No, the tree does the only thing it was designed to do in winter. It sends its roots deeper into the unseen soil. It stops producing visible fruit on the surface and focuses entirely on holding tightly onto the ground below. The darkness of winter is not a punishment for the tree. It is a vital, absolutely necessary season of strengthening. Without the violent winds of winter pushing against the trunk, the tree's root system would remain shallow, and it would easily topple over when a real hurricane arrives in the future. The difficult season you are walking through right now is not a punishment from an angry God. The temporary silence of heaven does not mean the Lord has abandoned you. This dark night is your winter, and it is forcing your spiritual roots to grow deeper into the solid soil of faith than they ever have before. This is exactly why you can have deep, abiding hope tonight. The peace that is coming to you is not fragile. It is not easily broken by bad news. Think about the ocean. When a massive hurricane hits the sea, the surface is absolute chaos. There are 50-foot crashing waves, howling winds, and terrible destruction. It looks like the entire ocean is out of control. But if you dive down just 30 or 40 feet below the surface, the water is completely still. The deep ocean is totally unaffected by the violent storm raging above. God's peace is that deep water. It is not dependent on your current bank account balance. It is not dependent on the shifting opinions of other people. It is not dependent on whether your circumstances look favorable right now. It is a solid, unshakable assurance that you are fiercely loved by the God who breathed the burning stars into existence. There is another lesson hidden in the scriptures that speaks directly to the exhaustion you are feeling tonight. We find it in the life of the prophet Elijah. Elijah had just experienced one of the greatest spiritual victories of his entire life on Mount Carmel. He had seen fire fall from heaven. He had witnessed a massive miracle. But immediately afterward, the wicked Queen Jezebel threatened his life, and Elijah completely fell apart. He ran for his life into the wilderness, collapsed under a broom tree, and prayed that he would just die. He was entirely empty. He had nothing left to give. He was spiritually, physically, and emotionally burned out. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like you have fought for so long and tried to be strong for so many people that one piece of bad news just completely broke your spirit? Have you ever sat down and essentially told God, I am done. I cannot take one more step. I cannot fight one more battle. Look closely at how God responded to Elijah in that moment of absolute despair. God did not appear in a thunderstorm to lecture him. He did not yell at Elijah for lacking faith. He did not give him a 10-point sermon on how to be a better prophet. What did God do? He sent an angel to give Elijah some warm bread, some water, and told him to go to sleep. God recognized that Elijah was not necessarily suffering from a deep spiritual failure. He was simply exhausted. Sometimes, the most spiritual thing you can possibly do is stop trying to fix your entire life. Drink a glass of water and go to sleep. God knows your frame. He remembers that you are made of dust. He knows exactly how much pressure you can handle, and He knows when you have reached your human limit. You are allowed to be tired. You do not have to pretend to be a superhero. This connects to something many people overlook about the nature of God's timing. We are a generation obsessed with instant results. We have instant coffee, instant messaging, and instant delivery. So naturally, we expect instant answers to our prayers. When God delays, we immediately assume He is denying us. But a delay is not a denial. Look at the story of Joseph. Joseph was given a beautiful prophetic dream by God when he was just a teenager. He saw a future where he was in a position of great leadership and influence. But immediately after receiving that promise, his life went into a terrifying downward spiral. He was betrayed by his own flesh and blood brothers. He was thrown into a dark pit. He was sold as a slave in a foreign country. He was falsely accused of a terrible crime by Potiphar's wife. And finally, he was thrown into a dark, forgotten Egyptian dungeon for years. Imagine being Joseph, sitting in that damp prison cell year after year. The dream God gave him must have felt like a cruel joke. He had done the right things. He had maintained his integrity. He had fled from temptation. And yet his reward was a prison sentence. It would have been so easy for Joseph to become deeply bitter. It would have been entirely understandable for him to abandon his faith and conclude that God was a liar. But Joseph maintained a quiet, steady trust in the dark. What Joseph did not know, and what he could not possibly see from his limited perspective in the dungeon, was that God was using every single setback to perfectly position him. The pit led to Potiphar's house. Potiphar's house led to the prison. And the prison was the exact location where Joseph would meet the king's cupbearer, which was the only possible connection that could eventually lead Joseph to the throne room of Pharaoh. Every terrible thing that happened to him was actually a necessary stepping stone toward the fulfillment of the promise. You might feel like you are sitting in a dungeon right now. You might feel betrayed, forgotten, and hopelessly off track. You look at your life and think, this is not what I planned. This is not the dream I had for my family, for my career, for my future. But you must understand that the author of your story has not dropped his pen. The same God who perfectly orchestrated Joseph's rise to power is actively working behind the scenes of your life tonight. He is rearranging circumstances you cannot see. He is shifting the hearts of people you haven't even met yet. The delay is actually a vital preparation phase. God is building your character so that when the blessing finally arrives, you will have the spiritual maturity to handle it without it destroying you. Now consider this deeply. How would your life change if you truly believed that everything you are going through right now is preparation rather than punishment? It completely alters how you walk through the fire. When you realize that the pain has a purpose, the pain suddenly becomes bearable. You stop asking God, "Why are you doing this to me?" And you start asking, "Lord, what are you building in me?" This is the secret to enduring the waiting seasons of life. It is shifting your focus away from the visible circumstances and locking your eyes onto the invisible character of God. Let me share another perspective from the life of Jesus that perfectly illustrates this. One evening, Jesus and his disciples were crossing the Sea of Galilee in a small fishing boat. Jesus went down into the lower part of the boat and fell asleep. Suddenly, a furious squall came up. The waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. The disciples, many of whom were professional, hardened fishermen who had spent their entire lives on this exact lake, were absolutely terrified. They knew how deadly these sudden storms could be. The boat was filling with water. They were sinking. In a complete panic, they ran down below deck and woke Jesus up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Listen closely to that question. Don't you care? Isn't that the exact question we scream at heaven when our lives are falling apart? When the medical diagnosis is bad, when the bank account hits zero, when the divorce papers are served, we look up at the silent sky and cry out, "God, don't you care that I am drowning down here?" We interpret his silence as apathy. We assume that because he hasn't immediately stopped the storm, he must not love us anymore. But look at what Jesus did. He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He turned to his disciples and asked, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" The disciples were terrified because they were focused on the size of the storm. Jesus was asleep because he knew the size of his own authority. The disciples thought they were going to die because water was getting into their boat. But they forgot one crucial, undeniable fact. It is completely impossible for a boat to sink if the creator of the ocean is sitting inside of it. Your boat is not going to sink. I know the wind is howling right now. I know the waves are crashing over the sides, and it feels like everything is going under. I know you are frantically trying to bail the water out with your own small bucket. But the Lord is in your boat. He has not abandoned ship. He has not left you to drown in this sea of anxiety. He is right there with you, and at the exact right moment, He is going to stand up and speak peace to your chaos. But there is another lesson hidden here, something many people overlook. What if Jesus doesn't immediately calm the storm? What if the storm keeps raging for another month or another year? The goal of the Christian faith is not just to have Jesus calm the storm around you. The deeper miracle, the far more beautiful goal, is for Jesus to calm the storm inside of you, even while the wind is still blowing outside. True spiritual maturity is learning how to sleep in the boat while the storm is still raging. This naturally leads us to a profound truth about personal growth. How do we build that kind of internal peace? It requires intentional discipline. It requires us to actively manage what we allow our minds to consume. In our modern world, we are constantly bombarded by fear. The news cycles are designed to keep us terrified. Social media is designed to keep us angry and dissatisfied. We absorb all of this negative, fear-driven energy all day long. And then we wonder why we cannot sleep at night. If you want the peace of God to guard your heart and mind tonight, you have to stand guard at the door of your own thoughts. You have to stop feeding your anxiety. You cannot constantly meditate on worst-case scenarios and expect to feel the joy of the Lord. The Apostle Paul wrote these powerful words while sitting in a Roman prison. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Notice that Paul did not say, think about how unfair your situation is. He did not say, think about how much better other people have it. He said to intentionally direct your thoughts toward things that are true and lovely. This is a deliberate choice. When the anxious thought enters your mind tonight, you do not have to invite it in for coffee. You do not have to pull up a chair and entertain it for 3 hours. You can acknowledge it and then hand it directly to God. Imagine your mind like a garden. If you constantly plant seeds of fear, insecurity, and doubt, you are going to harvest a crop of anxiety and depression. But if you plant seeds of gratitude, trust, and scripture, you will eventually harvest a profound sense of peace. You have to weed your mental garden tonight. One of the most powerful ways to pull those weeds is through the practice of gratitude. I know it sounds overly simple, but gratitude is the most devastating weapon you can use against fear. It is emotionally and neurologically impossible to be deeply thankful and deeply terrified at the exact same moment. When you begin to genuinely thank God for what He has already done in your past, your perspective on what He is going to do in your future radically shifts. Think back over your life right now. Think about the terrible dark storms you were absolutely certain would destroy you 5, 10, or 15 years ago. Remember those long nights when you cried yourself to sleep, convinced that the pain would never end? Remember that situation that felt completely impossible to navigate. Look at you now. You are still breathing. You survived. You made it through the fire. God did not abandon you then. He provided exactly what you needed, exactly when you needed it. The exact same faithfulness that carried you through your darkest yesterdays is standing right beside your bed tonight. God does not change. His character is permanent. You have a track record of surviving difficult days, and God has a perfect, unbroken track record of keeping His promises to His children. If He took care of you then, why would He suddenly stop taking care of you now? Let's look deeper into what this means for your tomorrow. Many of us suffer because we try to live in tomorrow before it even arrives. Jesus gave us a very clear command regarding this. He said, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." Each day has enough trouble of its own. God provides grace for today. He provides manna for today. When the Israelites were wandering in the desert, God caused bread to fall from heaven every single morning. But there was a strict rule. They could only gather enough for that specific day. If they tried to hoard it out of fear for tomorrow, the bread would rot and fill with maggots. God was teaching them a daily rhythm of trust. When you lie awake at night worrying about a meeting that is happening next week, or a bill that is due next month, you are trying to borrow tomorrow's trouble without having access to tomorrow's grace. God will give you the strength you need for Tuesday, on Tuesday. He will give you the wisdom you need for Friday, on Friday. You do not need to figure out next year tonight. You just need to close your eyes and rest in the grace provided for this very moment. As we continue, there is another perspective worth considering regarding the pain of waiting. Have you ever wondered why waiting seasons feel so incredibly long? When we are in pain, a week can feel like a decade. We feel like time is passing us by, and we are missing out on our own lives. But what if this difficult season is actually shaping something immensely important inside of you? Think about the story of David. Long before he was the legendary king of Israel, long before he defeated Goliath, David was just a forgotten shepherd boy sitting out in a lonely field. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king, David's own father didn't even bother to invite him into the house. He was overlooked. He was considered unimportant. But God saw him. God anointed him. However, right after receiving the promise that he would be king, David did not march to the palace and sit on a golden throne. Instead, he spent over a decade running for his life. He lived in caves. He was hunted like an animal by a jealous King Saul. He lost his home, his wife, his mentor, and his safety. He spent years in complete isolation and fear. During those dark cave years, David wrote many of the Psalms we read for comfort today. In Psalm 13, he cries out, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart?" Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the exact words you have been whispering in the dark? David, a man after God's own heart, felt completely forgotten. He felt like the promise was a lie.